We'll get to the jobs number in a second, but can you establish a calendar for next week on the signing? Is it going to be Wednesday? And what's going to be in this fact sheet?
We have full expectation it's going to be Wednesday. We're making plans for that, and we think it'll be a significant signing. I think that, as you know, and as you've commented on your show, in some cases it's a détente, which is positive for markets, but we think it's also substantial in that there's pledges from China for significant additional commodity purchases in the United States. In addition, some commitments they've made to continue working on currency manipulation as well as forced transfer of ownership, which are big achievements that are probably behind the story on the commodity purchasing, but perhaps even bigger stories, and will be laying the foundation for a phase 2 deal as well.
And speaking of that phase 2 deal, Mark, the president, of course, mentioning that the timing could get pushed out until after the election. Is that what you're expecting as well for phase 2?
Courtney, I don't think we know. I think we're anxious to get started right away. We're not looking to delay it till after that. I think a question is that obviously the election in the United States impacts a lot of people's thinking. And what we don't know is China believing they'll get more favorable terms if it was a different administration. But at the same time, we believe these are important changes that need to be made for the American people. We believe that the tariffs that President Trump has put on China showed them that the era of economic surrender is over, and that we think that it brings China to the table. So we're hopeful it happens sooner, but we don't know.
The naysayers still argue, I don't know what you make of this, Mark, that China's already complained about making firm commitments, that it runs afoul of WTO rules, that their own companies don't need it, and then they keep buying from the Brazilians, and that creates doubts as to whether or not they can really double U.S. buys. What do you make of that?
Well, I think we saw actually the last couple of months of last year significant additional purchases from China, which I think was a good indication of their commitment to live up to agreements that they've made. But I think as well that the president's leverage that he's applied has brought China to the table. And I think we've seen decades of believing that just because we allowed China in the WTO, that they would make all these other concessions that would change the nature of their communist regime, and it hasn't happened. It's actually been the forcing, putting tariffs on, and bringing them to the table with the economic pressure that has really begun to change their ways. And we think that it's, again, this is an important first step. It's significant, but we think it also paves the way for a phase 2 deal.
Mark, back to today's jobs number, which was strong relative, at least when you look at the overall trend. I mean, we're still talking about an average of 176,000 jobs added each month of last year. But manufacturing kind of remained stubbornly weak, particularly the last 6 months of the year. When this trade war began, in part it was designed, I thought, to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. Is that something that you still believe could happen?
Absolutely. I think that overall there's been a significant net increase in manufacturing jobs. You're right, it's been weaker the last few months, but what we hear from manufacturers, a lot of that has been tied to uncertainty about trade. But you look at the end of last year, not only completing the phase 1 of the China trade deal, but also now seeing completion of USMCA, hopefully getting to the president's desk by the end of January. I think that's giving manufacturers a lot more assurances. So we hear a lot of optimism coming out of manufacturers. I think you're right as to where the concerns were at the end of last year, but we feel that they're far more encouraged. The overall number, though, I mean, look at the state of this. It's 3.5% is the lowest unemployment rate since 1969, and we've been under 4% for 12 months. It's been decades since that's been the economic strength in the United States of America. So we're pretty excited about where it stands.